Yeah, conservation. They might be older. We're not. Somebody that drives a Jeep, remember the play, chance got two bigs.
Somebody with that. Oh, weird. Okay, good evening, everyone. Calling the meeting to order. We have two hearings on the agenda tonight. The first being Josh Fournier and the business on Route 17. And secondly, the Fairgrounds project, and we'll hear that one second. So with regard to the Fournier application, this is an application for a business that does tree work, firewood processing and sales, storage of equipment, trucks and so forth on the property on Route 17. And I will ask Josh to do a summary for us again. The planning board found this application complete on the 8th of October. And there were several outstanding issues that we had identified at that time, and we can talk about those this evening. So I'll open the hearing on this application. And I'll mention a couple of those issues that we identified on the 8th, and you can address those if you wish. I think some of this is resolved, but we had identified these specifically. So it'd be helpful if you spoke to them, and they'll probably have some questions. This one is more for Chip, I think, than for you. We had questioned the list of abutters and whether or not it was complete, but Chip tells me that he's reviewed that, and I think we have a complete and accurate list at this point, but we'll check in with him again on that. Then secondly, there was some question around the zoning of your parcel, whether it was rural or rural residential. And I've discussed that with Chip. The land use maps that are on the town website do identify that 500-foot strip from Route 17 back as being rural residential, and then beyond that, the property is rural. So I know there was a question in your mind, and I think a couple of others, about whether the maps indicated it was rural or rural residential. But I would say again that as a practical matter, it probably doesn't matter a great deal, because what you're proposing is allowable in either of those districts. And then the third issue that I had noted is that we had asked that you bring us a revised sketch map that clearly indicated the area on your property where you expect to conduct a business. And my understanding was that the parcel itself is around 41 acres, but 2.5 of that is used to the business, and you'll be operating on that 2.5 acres. So the planning board was interested in having that area that is the subject of our discussion delineated on the map. And then the other issue with the map was that we wanted to see where the Stanley Road entrance would be. You had indicated that your longer term plan was to put in a second entrance that would enter onto the Stanley Road.
Yep.
So so those are the three issues I had, and if you'd like to come up and provide a summary, that would be helpful to us.
Just a summary on what the business is doing.
Yeah, we may have some members of some interested parties who might want to comment or not, I'm not certain.
Yep.
But just so there's a general outline of your,
Sure.
your proposal out there, and everyone has the same information.
Yep. So we operate a tree service there. I sell firewood for heating purposes. We cut trees down, bring them back to the yard, trim them up, get them ready to sell. It takes a certain amount of room to lay all the logs out, measure them, cut them, trim them, clean up the area. And then for the parking for all the equipment, which is mostly that's underneath the barn, but a little bit of the parking space that I wrote down out in front of the barn. And then we just have an area in the barn where we work on the equipment that we use to cut the trees. The existing entrance is on 17. And I wanted to, you can see where I wrote the larger areas for the laydown yard, for more room.
Okay, so this is the revised map
Yep.
you're talking about.
Yep. So larger area going up towards Stanley Road. I added another driveway there originally to access that cornfield that's there. And just in terms of pulling out and stuff, we decided that we wanted to make that a exit if we wanted it to be, you know, accessible for us to get in and out of there. Just made it safer to get on the road. And then in being, there's an area in there where I figured that I could add to put more logs and stuff down, store more firewood. And it actually ended up being, when I measured it all out, it ended up being like 3.5 acres.
3.5.
Yeah. And overall, that's all we really do there.
So this area that you have outlined in dark, that's the
Yes,
limit of the business
Yeah,
already.
the white line is the property line.
Okay,
And then I just added the black line as the area that we do use. The dotted line up to the right is where that driveway is. It's a little over the line, but it abuts that line.
okay. Did you, do you have measurements on any of these dimensions?
I don't have any on this picture, but I do have some in my phone, yeah.
Planning board members, any questions?
I just, so people like me were bad at reading maps. From the driveway, where it says new drive.
Yep.
To this area, this is Stanley Road, on the right?
Yes, away from that big white barn. Going to if you're looking to the right of the paper, that would be Stanley Road. You can see the little dots there, that's Route 17, and then to the far right, you can just see a corner of Stanley Road.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Do you own any of these abutting properties, sir?
I do, towards the black line, I do, all the way
This
around
one,
that
right?
black line, yeah, going out and then down the hill towards 17.
Okay, but not up here.
Yeah, going up 17 that way, I do, yep.
But the white line, there's like a sliver here that is owned by Vorpagel, is that?
Yes,
correct?
yep, there's like a long triangle piece. Steve Vorpagel owns that, and then the one right up on the corner, that's Ryan. He owns that, and then the only other real close abutter. I didn't catch her name, but she's right across from that old barn that was right against 17.
Woodford.
So how far is your property boundary from the house on the Vorpagel lot?
Up near the house, it's very close. I think he built that on an old foundation that was there. So he doesn't have a lot of room right there. And then the Ryan one, I think he's got a 2.5 acre parcel and he's not quite halfway back.
Well, one of the reasons that we were looking for this revised sketch map was to, when we approve an activity, we want to make sure that we know, what we're approving and where.
Yep.
And so I don't know, about other board members, but it seems to me that it would be helpful for us to have some dimensions on this. So we know at least, roughly, for instance, what's the distance of that front line, where you might be doing wood storage, your lay down garden wood storage.
Does the lease show that? How much acreage? The business is.
between myself and the business. It does not, it just has the address of 492.
Did we have the lease?
Um. Yeah. It's appended in here. Yeah. Yeah. So the lease itself doesn't talk about the specific acreage on which you'd be conducting business.
It does not.
Other members, please, share your thoughts on this. I'm thinking it would be helpful to have as part of the record. Specifically what that acreage is and, at least the rough dimensions of it as you expect to be operating. And I think it might be as simple as just adding it to this map that you've already done for us.
Okay,
Others?
There could be a process.
just approximate footage.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a, a survey exercise. Or
Yeah,
anything
right.
like that, but, we'd like to know generally, where you're gonna be located.
Is there certain lines or you want every one of those?
Josh, I think the last time that you were here, we asked you to bring a map, right?
Yeah.
You did it?
Yeah,
That's what I did.
Well, he brought.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, did anyone specify that they wanted those dimensions in front of that page?
no, just an outline and
Because it feels like,
draw what.
I'm surprised that we would have let you come here without those dimensions if that's something that we wanted. I mean, how many times have you been here? Is this your third, fourth time,
Second time,
second time?
in here, but quite a few times in
Okay,
with the issue.
so are we thinking that we're gonna hold this up until he puts the dimensions on the map, or we're gonna let him do it after?
Well, we're not to the end of the hearing yet.
I'm asking a question.
I think it's something that theoretically we could condition approval.
Okay.
There, Mr. Porter, on the original, on your application, like the third from the last page, there is a sketch with a bunch of numbers on it, but those aren't dimensions, are there? What are? It's this page if you.
You mean this year?
Well, but yeah, numbers and 970.
Oh, that was the overall lot, so it's for the whole piece, so the 41 acres.
But the 2430 and the 2719, those are also.
Yes, 2,719 feet.
Just for my clarity, Josh, is it, do you lot 18, 16, and 14? Is that correct, sir? And the primary business.
18, 16, and 14.
And
Yeah,
the primary business is on 16.
yes, yeah. A good, probably 75% of them. Yeah.
Okay, and the area here on the map that you provided today that has the laydown yard? That's
Yes,
on-
That's probably mostly on 18.
Okay,
Yeah.
just making sure I'm looking.
And a lot of that is just roadside storage, so with that road going up there, I was having drainage issues with where I stack my wood now.
Yep.
So if I put it up on that hill, then I could let the original ditch continue to take water. The
Okay,
issue was when I stacked all the logs and then you'd plow it, the snowbank would hold all the water in the yard.
thanks, I was just trying to.
Yep.
You really don't see that in 17, do you? In the tree line there.
You know, there's a pretty good tree line right behind Vorpagels and it's the house and it's pretty hard to see.
Yeah, I was.
What would be the
I
concern?
was just trying to get.
What's the concern with the footage?
There's not a particular concern, like I said, I think that we're interested in and being specific about what it is we're approving, you know, the area. we're approving, basically. It's not a specific concern about the acreage itself, it's just wanting to know, you know, for the record where it's located, and how large it is.
Gotcha. Okay,
And, you know, you said you had taken some measurements, if that doesn't include all these little jogs, that's not, you know, especially important, but the longer lines. It would be helpful to, you know, to have whatever measurements you did take.
gotcha. I mean. To me, you know, roughly, like I said, 3.5 acres, and then you can see the existing property lines, which is what the town has on maps already. You know.
Mhm.
Half of that you guys probably already have, or could get pretty easily. And with this map here, I think that's plenty.
Is that all you? Don't disagree.
Yeah.
Is that all you envision though, or just thinking about the future?
Going forward, yeah, and
We wouldn't want to approve something that was a smaller footprint than you actually.
then have to redo it. Yeah, exactly. You know, I thought about just drawing just the new road going in.
Yep.
And that was why I brought that right to that property line on the laydown yard. You know, that's more room than I foresee needing.
Okay.
So, there is activity, there's storage on. Is that 18, 14, 14, 16, 18, so there's activity on 16 and 14 and 16,
No.
correct?
No 14,
No 14.
mostly 16, and then that road that goes up to
Oh, it's
Stanley
just the
Road.
road that's off, okay,
No, that laydown yard is on 18 as well.
it's on 18.
Yes, yeah. But the primary amount of the work is going on 16.
Yeah. But the laydown yard and the wood storage area is part of the business.
It is, yeah.
Okay. Okay, other questions? Planning board members? Okay.
This is one directed to Jim. So if you turn to page 66 of the new ordinance. So it says that signs and so this, the first 500 feet is rural residential. And that's where the sign is located, probably 50 feet in. And it says that signs in rural residential district shall not exceed 6 square feet in area. And so, I don't know, the sign is much bigger than 6 foot, but you approved was a 32 square foot sign,
Correct.
but if the ordinance is 6 square feet.
I was using the map off the computer. It appeared to me that was in the other district. And, you know, it's not laid down very well anywhere, so.
Did you say 6 square feet? I mean, 6 square feet.
Maybe
How
I
big
could-
is Bellevue's sign on top of the hill? Do you know how big that one
I
is?
don't know.
That one was also in the same color as I was. It was fairly large.
Just to go back for a moment, and, you know, provide the background around this issue. Prior to, Mr. Fournier coming in and seeking site review approval. He had requested a permit, to erect a sign for the business.
She was great.
And, he received approval, for a sign. There were some questions that came up subsequently about whether or not that sign met the standards in the ordinance. And so, you know, there have been, some thoughts around that. We've not talked about that in the planning board meeting because it wasn't the, you know, that it wasn't the time and place. At the time when this first came up, there was no application pending before the planning board. And so, you know, I think some of us have some questions about the applicability of the standards to this sign, but there are several different ways, obviously, we could, deal with this issue. As part of the site review process, the sign becomes part of that. But we have this situation where it was approved separately, as it currently stands. There's another provision of the ordinance that appears to be applicable as well, that the sign does not meet. But as I said, there are several different ways that we could approach this. We could simply agree to let it stand in place. We could require that the sign be modified. We could condition it in such a way that if you ever put up a new sign, that it would be in full compliance with the standards of the ordinance. So I think there are several different ways that we could approach that issue. And I'd like to hear from planning board members about your thoughts on that.
I've asked many times, what's not compliant about the sign? So what is the, because I've got read the labels doing this myself. I've never seen 6 square feet, I've seen 32 square feet, I've seen 20 feet, I've seen 8 feet. I noticed that you lowered the sign.
You want me to say where it's from?
Is that?
No.
No, it looks like it's gotten shorter or something.
It's probably the rocks around it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, but so yeah. Well, where is it not compliant?
Did you read that section?
Well, what I read was, yeah, that's another section, sign was 6 square feet.
In the rural residential, which this is, and then the other piece.
But it was interpreted as not rural residential, right? And that's where I got confused, because I didn't think it was rural residential either.
Right, depending upon what map town you look at.
Well, if you look at the land use map, which is the body of regulation that we have, it is in the rural residential.
I looked at the map that the code enforcement officer looked at
I don't.
when he
know
granted
that
the
one.
permit.
The other piece that's relevant is,
No, but I mean, I thought we were talking about the sign here, and
Yeah.
what's not compliant, so.
Yeah.
There's a disagreement about this zoning.
No.
Well, Chip granted it based upon one thing. And then we're saying it was something else.
Right.
So.
and there's a second provision, if this is your question, if you
Yeah.
want to know which pieces apply to this. That's one, and the second one is, on page 66, 3A. And it says, the area of the sign shall be the surface or space between the outlines of the sign, including the borders. So that's with the words on it.
Yeah,
The structural supports shall be excluded if they do not constitute a major part of the sign, or if the structure is not used to identify or attract attention to the business. So I think, there was, there's some relevance of that provision to this particular sign because of the large structural supports.
Josh, can you walk me through what you went through before you put that sign up? And, I mean, did you just do this without permission and just decide to erect the sign and make it as big as you wanted to and as high as you wanted to without any kind of guidance?
Nope, I called in to Chip, I spoke to him, he told me all over the phone, what I could do. In terms of the sign size, he said it was 36 square feet based on the speed limit. He got me the form, I filled the form out, I made the sign, and there was nothing pertaining what I put it in terms of the outside stand.
Would you mind sharing the cost of the sign that you're investing in? You don't have to if you don't want to.
I have about $7,500 in the sign.
Okay.
Between
So
the
you-
posts that hold it, the timbers, the sign itself, and then the work to stand it.
So you went to the town, you sought permission to put the sign up, you got permission to put the sign up, you complied with whatever they told you to. And you spent $7,500.
Yeah.
Okay,
And Dana, I want to be clear that this is an issue that is part of a typical site review discussion.
yeah,
And it is necessary for us to bring this issue up because there has been conversation about it. And it needs to be resolved.
so do we
I'm
typically?
not saying that the
Okay.
sign has to be torn down.
Okay.
I've never said that. I said there are several different ways that we could approach this, and we need to discuss it now.
Okay, but I'm just speaking from the perspective of a resident. It feels like Josh has been screwed around, right? It feels like he's just been jerked around. It's like he's been given direction, he invested money in good faith. He complied with what they told him to, and now we're second guessing him, and we could potentially tell him to remove, so I'm not telling him that. But we're saying that we have the authority to do that, so I'm just giving some perspective on this.
If I may. Mea culpa, okay? I went using a map other than the one that is the official map. The
Yeah.
map I use is an overlay. It is the zoning map, but the overlay is not. Okay. Mea culpa. Me, not him, not you. I made a mistake, okay? This thing happens. We work through it in this meeting. I think there is an avenue to work through it.
Okay,
So I'd rather work on that avenue than, cast aspersions.
well, I don't fault you
Dave,
for
I'm
it,
just saying, let's get this thing.
but Chip, I don't fault you for it, like, give me a culpa, that's, I mean, you got a big job, you got a lot of responsibilities, you have to make a lot of decisions, I don't fault you for it at all. What I'm just looking for is a fair resolution.
And that's what.
And that's what I'm
That's what she's
suggesting,
working.
that we talk about this issue, and everyone has an opportunity to share their
Okay.
perspective, and then we'll decide what the appropriate thing to do is.
My.
First of all, I want to complete the hearing.
Okay.
And I want to make sure that there are not outside parties that would like to comment, and then we'll come back to this.
Okay,
So, you planning board members, any other questions before we continue?
Well,
Peter?
if you don't want me to, I could ask this later, if you want the public comment first. I was gonna, one more question for this, I'm not suggesting you should or need to do this, Mr. Fournier. But if that sign could be moved to the rural district, would it still be visible?
No,
No, it
No.
wouldn't. Okay.
no. Okay, we'll come back to that. First, is anyone here, in the audience, does anyone have any questions or comments about this application?
Sure, I'll say something. Sean Keegan, Sadie Dunn Road. I would just like to say, as someone that's dodged cows from that property before, and someone who watched that barn look like some things, I'm really appreciative to the work that Mr. Fournier's done on the property and to bring it current for the town. And I think his sign is beautiful, so. That's
Morning, Ray. Josh is certainly a better neighbor than we had in the past. Yeah, done a lot of work around there, runs a good business. The only thing he's not doing that Everett Mace done, when Everett done everything that Josh is doing. Josh hasn't got 200 cows there. So I think it, the sign thing, ain't gonna get into that, but I think Josh and his people are doing a fine business.
Thank you, Lenny. Anyone in the Zoom space with a comment?
I had one from a person who called in right before this meeting, the Woodfords, who live across the street. Their initial question was, what's changing? I said, not much. Change use. She says, so there's not gonna be big industry going up. I said, no. She says, okay. Well, we really like them and they're doing good business, so she was happy to hear that the alternate route would take it through Stanley Road rather than come out to what I call Dead Man's Corner. And she agreed, and so she gave a big thumbs up.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, any other comments before we close the hearing? If not, I'd look for a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Is there a second? Discussion? All those in favor? Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, so let's come back to the issues. Why don't we pick up on the sign issue first? That's the most significant of them, I think, so.
So. My feeling is that. the town decided to have the rural residential zone be the first 500 feet along Route 17 as a way of the town not ending up looking like Manchester or something. And so in the rural district, you can do more commercial activity than in the rural residential. So the sign, having smaller signs, less big structures was one way of accomplishing that, of keeping it look more rural than rather than commercial and industrial. But I don't fault Mr. Fournier. I mean, first of all, I like his sign. Second of all, he did go to the code enforcement officer and get, he applied, he got the permits, and he's done what he's been permitted to do. The problem for us is that the next person that comes along the road says, why can't I have a sign like Fournier sign? I guess we'll have to just deal with it then and say, well, that was a mistake. But, I don't know what else to say about it. It was a mistake, and you spent the money and put up a sign. And
I guess,
that.
to that, it's within 4 square feet of what that ordinance that we went on was. So even if the business was sold, it wouldn't get any bigger than it is now, or what it's going to be over the next 20 years. And it looks no different than Bellevue, the depot sign right in town at the railroad tracks, all the existing ones that may be grandfathered or whatever. It doesn't make it look, I'm not saying you're saying my sign makes it look like Manchester, but it fits right in with every sign around it.
Yeah.
It's in turn, if it couldn't get any bigger, even if we went off the wrong one again. And it's just as big as the other ones nearby.
Others?
I think we should just let it ride. It's up, it looks good, leave it there.
I tend to agree. I mean, I think it's, I think it doesn't make any logical sense to have to make the applicant to do anything different. He followed the rules and the rules were applied, but he had no knowledge and non-conformity to the rules, so it's not his problem. I think it is, I don't disagree with Jack though, on that level, and I think it's a lesson that, well, we all learned, and we just learned from the situation and move on, but I don't think it should affect this application. In good news, I do like your sign, I think it's a nice sign, so, I think we got lucky with a good one.
Yeah, right.
And it's not pick up and going over the hill, isn't it?
And there are no cows, the cows on the road are a nice plus, not.
Right, yeah. That's a common consensus. Yeah.
Have you tabled?
Now, for the record, I agree completely. I think it's only appropriate to allow the sign to stay in place, and, we may have a situation in the future that we may need to deal with, but I agree with Jack, we'll deal with it at the time. You did come in, you permit, you received a permit, and, personally, I don't believe the planning board should penalize for that either. However, it was important that we talk about it because it was an issue on the table. And the purpose was not to cause dissent or contention in raising the issue. It was just something that needed to be discussed and put out on the table. So that's the reason it came up. Others, any other perspectives on this?
Sign.
On the sign?
And I share the same respect with this next month, that's been expressed.
Okay, so other issues.
The footage that you want put on the map. I'm sure I could work with Josh and have that within a day or two. So if you might consider approving with contingency, I think it'd be wise.
I assume, Chip, that you agree that it's better to have some dimensions on the map than not.
Yes.
We've had this discussion before.
Yep.
Okay, other issues?
Just wanted to ask about the new drive that will be put in. And I really appreciate your sensitivity to the safety factor there, and I assume, and also just, ease of your business. Is that, is your intention to continue using that though, and reduce the traffic on 17?
Yeah,
the truck
we'll
traffic?
use both. A lot of our work heads towards Manchester, back towards Winthrop, so we end up going uphill most of the time.
Okay,
But if we're heading into Readfield or Fayette or Mount Vernon, then we'll take a left and head downhill, which is much easier. Yeah,
And he has gotten a state permit for the curb cut.
yeah.
Good.
I got that in 21.
okay,
Originally, it was for the cornfield.
got it. Just want to understand that. Perfect, thanks.
I have one additional question for you. When we write up a decision, a notice of decision, we, would refer to this map and to the dimensions and so forth. And my question to you is, I want to make sure that this is the area that you're comfortable with, that you know that you're going to be operating the business within. And that, it doesn't need to be any bigger or different from this. And, if it does, now's the time to make that adjustment. It's the simplest time to do it.
I'm a little confined that way, space wise, because that hill's such a steep hill on the side.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
really most of my usable space.
yeah, okay.
It would take quite a job to get more.
Okay. Other issues? Okay. If not, we are ready for motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the application as amended to the conditions are the standard conditions. And then, a rough approximation of the dimensions of the area to be provided for this issue.
When you say provided, you want to be specific on a sketch?
Yeah, on the sketch.
Is there a second?
One second.
Okay. Motion and a second discussion. Any discussion, all those in favor? Okay. Thank you very much. You've been very helpful and provided everything we needed. Thanks very much. And you can work with Jeff on the condition, on the dimensions.
Sure.
We can help put that together.
I'll get it. Sounds good.
Good luck with your business.
Thank you. Appreciate it. We'll get the right guys. All set with me?
All set with you
All
guys.
set. Well, thank you guys.
Good night. Second agenda item tonight is the public hearing on the Fairgrounds project. And so I will open the public hearing. Just a general refresher and a summary from my perspective. The planning board found this application complete on October 8th. The application, we'll hear more about it, but it's for an expanded area at the fairgrounds. It's somewhat reconfigured and expanded. The area itself was originally approved by the planning board in 2013. That was simply for the baseball field and for a small parking area. That approval was amended to increase the size of the parking area in 2017. And one of the issues that has come up with this application is whether we should be addressing this as a new application or an amended application. We've had some conversations around that. Eric and I have talked about it, Jack and I have talked about it, and it feels as though, treating it as a new application is probably the most expeditious way to go, because the differences between this project and the old project are quite significant. And it would be, I think, much more confusing to try to sort through what was approved previously and what the conditions were on that, rather than to just look at this as a whole new project. I think it simplifies the matter, and I think Eric agrees, and you can speak to that, Eric, and you can provide your summary. We held a site visit at the fairgrounds. Most of the planning board members were there. We did that last Friday on the 8th, and that was very helpful. Thank you, Eric, for your input there. It helped to see it and to talk about it. And since we may have interested parties who might want to comment or ask questions, I'd like to start by asking, Eric, are you going to be the spokesperson or?
Yes.
Oh. So if you could provide another summary, I know we did it at the October 8th meeting, but because we have potentially some interested parties, it would be helpful to have the same information on the table for everyone who might be participating. So if you could provide that, that'd be great.
So essentially, we are looking to, as you noted, Paul, expand on the original footprint of the recreational facility at the fairgrounds. The use is the same. We won't be changing the use. It'll still be primarily an area for recreation for residents of all ages, visitors to town, things like that. We are looking to add amenities that include water and electricity, primarily for in support of those recreational activities. So we want to have water for a water filling station and a side spur that will go over to the cemetery so that they can fill up water in watering cans and things like that. We will not be irrigating the fields. The electricity will be there primarily to support things like community events. If we have a movie or something we need to show down there, as we do, and as we did on Halloween, and we've done in the past, things like that. Running a generator is okay, but it's not really what we're looking for. I will say just up front that the intent is not to have that be for any kind of electric lights. That's not part of the plan, nor is any kind of fixed PA system or the speakers on poles or anything like that. So I just wanted to start by explaining the scope of the utilities. The actual service components there will be a basketball court paved. That will include pickleball capacity and striping for other court activities. I guess you might call them multi-use sports court. Chain link fence around that to keep everything contained. The softball field will be put in essentially catty corner to the existing ball field. That will have dimensions that will support I think most levels of softball. I don't think it's it's just the ball field. It's not going to hit MLB level, but we want to make sure we can provide recreational level, and that's what we aim for. Also, with those two pieces of turf coming together, we will be removing the outfield fence on the existing ball field and giving the capacity to have a multi-use central field area. And that's shown on the map, and that can be for anything from lacrosse to soccer to football to ultimate frisbee to just kite flying, whatever else. We could have a lot of room there for events and activities. And actually, with the trunk or treat this year, we parked the folks that had the trunks on the infield or on the outfield, excuse me, of the existing ball field, and that worked really well. So I think that we can be creative in how we utilize that space. Again, the intent of that was to minimize parking on Main Street, and we were able to not have vehicles on Main Street. So this really is an expansion of capacity and use for the facility. The parking lot itself, speaking of that, will be increased slightly in size. But the real impact and value is paving and lining that. Gravel lots are notoriously hard to get density out of, and ours was no exception. We increased the size substantially 2018, maybe. But what we had on paper did not materialize because we didn't have the lines, the striping to make it happen. But this striping will allow us to do that. Also, we will have multiple handicap accessible spots, I believe 2 close to the entrance to the main ball field access path, and then 1 on the far side to access the trails. So we're trying to make sure we can accommodate all users. And we do have plans for, addressing things like parking. And that brings me to the update. I did you had some great questions at the last meeting. I just want to run through quickly and say, since the last meeting, I answered some questions in writing about buffering. And there will be buffering 40 feet minimum between the basketball court and the cemetery. And I am committing again to making sure that that's covered, that if we don't have, when that project's completed, if we don't have enough of a buffer, we'll make sure we have enough of a buffer because we're our own neighbors there and we don't want to have a negative impact on the view shed of that cemetery. The other item was wetland impacts. We were at 13,000 and where is it? 733 square feet, which is under and just under the 14,999 threshold for tier 2. So we are actually a tier 1 DEP permit that is in process. Rick can speak to that if you have any specific questions about the wetland permitting aspect of this. Parking, you had some great questions there. And it was suggested we look at Manchester, and I did. That one's a bit tricky because of the fielder's choice and all the stuff happening there. That place can get jagged just on a Saturday if there's nothing going on at the ball field. So we did look at a couple of other facilities. One in Litchfield that I think was a very good comparable because it has the 2 softball and baseball field. It has the multi-use field and it has multiple sports courts. And the parking that they have is similar to what we'll be able to provide for this site. In the end, I did my best effort to try to find out and look at what was a reasonable estimate of use through the different activities. That's a different screen. And I believe that we've got a pretty good grasp that we can have up to 2 ball fields used at the same time and additional activities for walking and basketball with normal use and accommodate those types of traffic impacts. Granted, there's another section here that I talk about use and scheduling. We know that we are held to a high standard here, that we have an obligation to make sure that we're not causing traffic issues and that we're not causing negative impacts on the neighbors because of too much activity. So we will be very mindful of that. And as we develop this project, we will be adapting and doing what we can to make sure that we're good neighbors. So I just wanted to make that point. And then the last couple points, portable toilets. We did talk to folks that, again, we mentioned this last time, authored the kind of the revisions to that state law. And I believe that we are not exempt, but we have the ability to simply request permission from the code officer to have a facility that has those portable toilets. Again, we're here to be good stewards and good and do the same level of care we have for the beach. And as we've had at this facility already, where we will be having those things pumped regularly as needed and having them taken away when the season's over. So I don't anticipate an issue, but maybe Chip, I don't know.
Excuse me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just, I don't think you have an issue, but we'll talk about that when the time comes. But the last item was a new versus amended application. You're right, Paul. I do agree that a new application makes the most sense. This is a pretty sizable change in scope. I think it's realizing the vision that was originally presented in the discussion, back in 2013. But it's a big project, and I want to make sure we have due process and due discussion on it. So that's my summary of where we are at. I glossed over a little bit the part of how we got here, but I'll just say it's been a multi-year community-based effort. And we've been active with fundraising, and I believe we have full capacity to make this happen. Likely not this coming summer, because we will likely be relying on Maine Army National Guard to do some of the construction work. Their schedule is looking much more like a 2026 schedule. But I think having this permitting in hand will be helpful for them and for us going forward with construction and also with fundraising. So that's what I've got.
Actually, you mentioned the earlier approval and looking back at some of that material, that was one of the reasons that I thought that the new application would be more appropriate than amendment. Because it did appear that, there was some vision to expand it at some point in the future. And in some way that shows up on the plan that accompanies the initial approval. Although it was clear that just the baseball field was approved, there were some other features on that map. And there were also some conditions on that approval. And to try to split that all out and determine what had been approved exactly and what conditions apply to it, rather than just giving the process over.
Well, we might want to pause, we haven't been broadcasting or recording.
Well, we're still recording okay on the computer. It's just, I think it's a projector issue.
Yeah, I was gonna say we could try to do a source search. I think it's just the source button that needed to be adjusted, but
I think we're still broadcasting. It's still up on the.
yeah, we are on my
I tried
laptop
to
anyway.
restart
It
it.
is.
Yeah, the laptop's doing it.
There it is.
That's not.
No, that's not it.
That's, yeah, that's Bill's.
Okay, one more source. We'll get to the rest. This is worse than my TV.
It's awful.
Paula, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, John.
Hi, I've been watching the whole meeting, but I haven't been able to get my video to work. Something's wrong with my Zoom connection.
Yeah, there's a problem right now, John. They're trying to figure it out.
Okay.
This is just in the building though, so the board can't see the screen that's behind them. But we are still recording and I can still see on my PC or on my laptop all the video.
Good.
Yeah, I think we're okay. Overall,
Yeah, oh,
maybe he'll come back.
that's bad. All right, yeah.
Okay, questions for Eric, planning board members.
Does it say in the application anywhere that there'll be no lighting or PA system, or are you just saying that?
I believe that's in the application, but I can, if it's not, I can put it in writing for you.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe that's a good time to make clear for the record that in addition to the application in front of us is dated September 23rd, 2024, but it was supplemented by some more pages dated November 7th. And in that supplement, it says that the facility will be, with rare exception, the facility will only be used during daylight hours. And now I don't know if it said anything specifically about lights, but I know it came up during the site visit. That's not part of the record. So are you representing that there will not be a lighting apparatus?
100%. There will not be fixed lighting of any kind up at this facility. We want to make sure we maintain the character and also don't encourage additional nighttime use beyond what we're monitor. Right, so right now we see it used for snowshoe hikes. We see it used for stargazing. Some people go there and palm twisted tea in the parking lot, but that's the rare exception. And so I don't want to invite that in any great degree. So.
There were three conditions in the original approval, Eric, from 2013. That may still be relevant here, so I just want to make sure that you're in agreement. The first says there must not be any electronically amplified sound on site. We've already talked about that. There must not be any artificial lighting of the field. And the third one, which we haven't talked about, but maybe we should, was that any chemical treatment applied to the field must be consistent with the application of ground chemicals policy of the Moran Cook School. I don't know if that was, and I don't remember seeing that in the application, but I wanted to see what your perspective on that was.
Yeah, so the first one I think is close. We do have amplified music. We have had amplified music at the facility. So I would modify that to say that there will be no fixed sound
Sound
systems.
system.
I mean, it's not enforceable. People go with stereos when they have picnics. We have kickball announcing when we have stuff down there. We have, again, the movies we show down in the ball field. We have some speakers so people can hear that. So I think that could be modified, should be modified. It's my request that it be modified to not be a prohibition of any amplified music, just that it not be on any fixed systems. The second one, no problem at all. And the third one, that seems unusually specific. And I think what I would be comfortable with is that, maybe something about best management practices. We're not planning on, spraying that place with Scots, or, it's not gonna be, we don't have the money for it, A. And B, I just don't think that's the direction of the intent. We wanna have healthy fields, we wanna make sure that we, fertilize intermittently, maybe do turf management as needed. Having a good grade and base, which we don't necessarily have to a great extent now, will help with that, make it easier, but I don't want to say that we're not going to use any kind of fertilizer, but I'm not sure how to approach that one, honestly, because I don't want to be unreasonably limiting, but I also don't want to be too permissive either.
I don't know what ground chemicals policy of Marina School District is, so, and I don't know where this originated from initially. It seems, on its face, it seems reasonable, but I don't know what that policy is, so I don't know anything.
Yeah, no, I mean, so I guess I would opt to have that just stricken and it seems a bit much. Again, we don't have the resources to be fertilizing that on a regular basis. It won't be irrigated, so it doesn't make a lot of sense to get too heavy on the chemicals. But
Did you, when we did the site visit, you said that there would be handicap spots down at the fields, that's.
yeah, so handicap accessible. So we're not going to have an actual marked handicap spot down at the field. What we will have is an access path that is wide enough for any vehicle to get down to the field, so that someone who needs to be down there can be down there, or if they need to have their wheelchair dropped off down there, that can happen too.
Is that where emergency vehicles would go to?
Same access point, correct?
What's your, if you don't get the money that you need, what I'm concerned about is that you start the project, you destroy the wetlands, cut down all these trees, and then you can't go forward because you don't have the money. One day, what's the plan is before you go forward with anything, comes the finances.
Sure, yeah, so we have $500,000 in a land and water conservation fund that's received state approval. We have $25,000 grant from Kennebec Savings Bank. We have an application that's been submitted to the Army Corps of Engineers for roughly $350,000 of site work that's coming in. And we have some local fundraising that's likely going to be between $25,000 and $50,000, depending on how that comes together. We've had success so far. I don't have any doubt that we won't get the money.
I said meeting there, so.
Yes. So as far as financial capacity, the town has the capacity. We have volunteers, we have folks that are working on this actively. And we've been able to do it so far. As far as what we do, I don't believe we're going to be doing much of anything without significant funding. That $500,000 is going to have to come through. We're going to have the ability to do the earth moving and the seeding and the drainage and all of that as a lump sum. We can't start the project until we have or any project component until we have funds to pay for it. I'd say that the one thing that may change is that if we come up short, we may look at paving the parking lot as a phase 2. However, that would likely trigger a different DEP permit scenario. And that would be something we would have to consider. But long story short, we won't be doing anything we don't have money to complete.
So in terms of the construction, when we started, I already had vision funds for completion of the project. Right?
Yeah, and the Land and Water Conservation Fund, they're not gonna give us $500 or $1,000 to toss away if we don't complete the project. They wanna know that we are able to financially make this happen. So we're working with partners that federal dollars, their expectations are as high and probably higher than yours are, that we actually have the capacity to realize this project. So like I said, we won't be doing anything until we have sufficient funds. I can't say anything. We won't be doing anything significant. We're paying for design work. We're paying for some other small components. We might look at the trails. There's a chance that we would do maybe the basketball court as a first pass, because that's really outside of the scope of some of the rest of it. But I don't see any scenario where we would pursue a project element without having funding in place to pay for it.
Could you talk about
Well, I just wanted to talk about the parking. You've got 68 spaces, and I think the supplemental information addressed extra parking on Church Road, and I was just trying to recall how that was laid out, whether it was tied to the sidewalk project.
So yeah, some of those spaces are tied to the sidewalk project. I think it's 28 maybe. 18 are what we estimated with a 25-foot spacing between about 10 foot past the entrance to the fairgrounds up to the second trail entrance by where the edge of the cemetery is. That gives us room, and that's been used again historically. I think that 25-foot spacing is reasonable. So we have 18 there. And again, that would be for what we would need to handle two ball games, and people walking and people playing basketball at the same time. I don't see that happening too often. And again, just like any other public space, we could invite enough people to overflow the whole system, but that's not the intent. And I think that we will be keeping a very careful eye as stewards of the property and of the road. I'm the road commissioner as well as the town manager. I don't want to be creating problems for myself or holding the town to a different standard than we would any other user of a public road like that. So there's going to be a level of care there that's probably more than what you would expect from a private business.
Can you talk a little bit about trails and the trails are fantastic, so is there any plans, how does this impact that? Doesn't change the access? I don't have the perception it does, but I just want to hear your thoughts on it. And there's some nice seating and things like that. Is the vision still to include that access and all that vision we have?
Yeah, so a couple things there. There is still the intent to have a pollinator garden with a slightly different trail alignment to get into that area to kind of go around the garden wherever that ends up. We have it located on the map, generally on the right-hand side of the parking lot near the memorial bench, perhaps extending into the field a little bit. There's a subcommittee of the Conservation Commission working on that component. Trails has been involved with this process as is conservation through representatives on the working group for the project, along with the cemetery, along with recreation and members at large. But the trails will have a minimal impact. So we're having that one kind of change the alignment on the right, and on the left, there will be a slight realignment around the basketball court where it currently goes in. Also, where that trail kind of tees off right in the very corner, that's going to be widened out so we can have that full access down on the left-hand side of the field area to get to the basketball court and that central area where we'll have amenities. And so there will be minimal impact to the trails, anything that's, I'd say that it's more of a rerouting of a few short sections than anything else. But I do believe that this is actually going to enhance the overall, trail network by, giving, again, better parking, more access, and introducing more people to that, network that we have.
What about funds for maintenance and things? Is that envisioned on an annual basis through allotment, once it's built, let's say?
Yeah, so we
How does-
currently, yeah, absolutely, yeah, so we currently maintain the facility, we currently pay for porta potties, we pay for. The plowing, the grading, the work, the gravel, replacing the fencing, things like that. Those are current things that we have in our budget and our activities. Mowing of the fields is currently budgeted, it will be twice the area, so we will have to add a little bit more time there, maybe another 3 to 4 hours every week or two, depending on the season. But we will have we will continue to have maintenance staff that are able to address that. So as far as the again, it's not so much a change in what we're doing, it's just a change in scope. We'll be doing more of what we already do.
Eric, I just went through and looked at some of the costs of, what it could be, because with a pickleball court, you gotta resurface that every 6 or 7 years, that's like 10 grand. And then so it's more than just mowing. And I just went and did some quick numbers, it's anywhere between $50,000 and $115,000 over a 10-year period to maintain these things above just mowing. So, I know that we're talking about burying that in the maintenance cost to the town, but I think it's an issue for the select board where they might want to consider breaking that out so people will understand and at least put together a fund and amortize some of that money so that they know what they're signing up for. It's more than mowing. We don't.
Yeah, I think 6 to 7 years is a bit ambitious. We're not in Florida, but we will have people using that court, and I expect that we'll want to be repainting it maybe every 6 or 7 years. Resurfacing, I think, would be every 10 or 15. But
Yeah.
But anyway, I think we have points taken that there are additional costs. The paving the parking lot is going to be something else. I mean, I'm not sure.
It's another cost. Yeah. I didn't think about that.
There are trade-offs, right? We're adding access, we're adding use and capacity. Those things do come with some cost, but again, this was presented, and I'm going to continue to present it as something that was no cost for the construction phase. There are, no one's saying there's not ongoing maintenance costs.
Yeah, but it's more than, like, it shouldn't be buried in a lot. People should know what they're signing up for if they're gonna approve this, which they already did. The town already approved it, but I don't know that people really understand the incremental cost.
Yeah, I guess that's a policy question for the select board more than a question for the planning board.
Okay.
But I hear what you're saying.
Other questions for Eric, planning board members?
So the wetlands, how'd you get so close? I mean, it seems, who measured the wetlands?
We had mainland consulting. This is Greg, he's our consulting engineer for this project.
Hi, thanks for having me tonight. To the question of wetlands. Our process is to have a wetlands delineator go out on site and figure out where those wetland upland boundaries are. We then locate those with a map and grade GPS and get them onto the plans. So that's how we have a 2D representation and the plans that are in your packet for where those wetlands are. And then when we do design, we use CAD to measure those to their exact, right? Even though delineation of wetlands is a science where one delineator may draw a line a foot away from another delineator. Once we have a wetland pattern, let's say, mapped on the plan, the impacts to that wetland are very specifically and exactly calculated through a CAD program.
At what time of the year do they take that?
They can delineate in a lot of the times of the year, whether it's wet or dry, it doesn't really matter that much. excluding winter with heavy snow cover, it's difficult to do delineation because then you're not seeing your vegetation component. But I think to where your question's going is a lot of folks will associate wetlands with areas that are saturated or can be wet, you're sinking in your boots kind of thing in the spring, and that's not necessarily the regulatory definition of a wetland, although those areas can be a wetland. Thank you.
Good questions, planning board.
So is there a DEP permit that's required?
Yes, we have required a tier 1 DEP permit for the project. And that's in process. We should hear back from them in a couple months.
Yeah, the NRPA Natural Resources Protection Act permit gets submitted at the same time as a stormwater management law permit. Those are both in the process of being drafted. And currently, we're waiting on a pre-application from the pre-application meeting with DEP, which is part of their process. They are really underwater at the moment. The DEP is understaffed with the amount of applications that they've had over the last couple of years. And so they're slow to respond. They actually wanted to waive the requirement for a pre-application meeting. I think just to ease their burden. And in this case, we said, no, we really actually want to follow that process and have a pre-application meeting with you. So we're stuck in a little bit of a loop while we wait for that to be scheduled with DEP.
So it's likely to be more than a couple of months before we have a permit.
But by the sound of it, yeah, so I guess what I would request would be a conditional approval if the board's willing to consider that. Conditional upon DEP permitting.
Other questions, planning board members?
And there's something in our LUO about when you grant approval, the project has to be substantially started within a year, I think it is. And precisely, you said that it might not start till the spring of 26. So that would be more than a year.
I think we have the ability to extend that though,
Yeah.
so.
If you come back. You can extend it another year.
Yeah, that would be my my understanding. And again, we hope that we can do some components of this perhaps in the spring of next year, but the Army Corps being the main bulk of this work, we could have materials delivered. We have to order the materials and pay for those. The Army Corps only does the actual earthwork and laydown. So I think that there is a good chance that if we do have approval and are able to proceed, that we could have certain components of this taking place in 2025. But again, I don't want to give an unreasonable picture, so I think that the actual earthwork is most likely to happen in 2026, and that will be the most significant impacts. If we know that we have the money in hand and we know that we have keep trying to say DEP, Army Corps lined up, we may look at doing some clearing in the fall so that we can have the site ready for work in the spring to do the actual cut and fill. So I do see potential outcomes where we do work in 2025. And whether or not that's determined to be significant or not, I guess is up to Chip and the planning board. But this will be a 2-year project, there's no question.
Just thinking about a couple of things that, public management issues. So what about like waste management? You got a ball game there, you got a lot of trash. Like, how are you going to manage that? We don't have, public trash systems. So, I mean, is there how's that being addressed?
So 2 ways. Again, we do have we have 2 waste stations there now. We have a waste barrel, and we also have a dog waste receptacle, which is interesting. It's not my favorite thing in the world, but in any event, we do have some of that happening now, and we have the staff, and they can, instead of doing 1 trash can, they can do 2. We also have new staff in our community programming coordinator who will be helping to oversee and manage this facility, just like she will be Jen Worthing in the back here, helping to oversee and manage the town beach. So, the select board recognizing the need and the intent to expand our recreational offerings has supported that with staff. So, I'd say we have the capacity, with administrative staff, but also with our maintenance staff to handle that.
I would also chime in that, the rec and the people who are using the field are pretty good about cleaning up after themselves.
That's Hannah, if you guys don't know Hannah. Chair of the rec board.
So
Okay.
are we, like, the prior approval, will that stand to the extent it's not consistent with the approval?
No, I mean, if we go forward with this as a new application, which I think, there's some agreement that that's most appropriate. I would think that if, whatever is issued in this regard would be a standalone approval. And it would be clear that it superseded all previous approvals and conditions. I think that's the only way to make it clean.
The only conditions before were the light and the noise and the.
No, there were a couple of others as well. But let's get back to those because I do want to get comments from interested parties if there are any. We'll speak with that one. Any other questions for Eric? Okay.
One more.
Any comments? People in the audience, do you have comments or questions about this project that you'd like to make? Eric.
I'm Jerry Bly. I was one of the co-leaders of the Fairgrounds Working Group that put together the overall plan. And just very briefly, that group had representatives from 5 town committees on it. It had liaisons from the school, from the planning board, from the historical society as well. The points I would make is there was a tremendous amount of time and effort balancing conservation of both the existing natural resources at the fairgrounds as well as the trails with developing new facilities there. So that was a big part of what we did. Strong feelings on both sides, and the resulting plan really reflects the outcome of that effort. We worked with Rick as well as landscape architect Regina Leonard, who really provided really superb guidance as we took our ideas and put them into a plan. I can't speak to the technical aspects of the proposal here. I'll leave that for others to do. Just one thing, Henry, with regards to trail, one addition that we're doing, Eric mentioned it, is a trail that sort of circles around the parking lot that will be integrated with the pollinator garden. That'll be a universally accessible trail. So for people of all mobility. And so that's an actual plus to that. And as Eric said, the trail system otherwise will be largely left intact with a few reroutes. Eric mentioned the Army Corps lot. It's actually the National Guard that is doing the work, not the Army Corps, just another correction.
Thanks for the correction.
There on that. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Just say a lot of effort and thought and effort, a lot of different people went into coming up with the overall concept. Yes.
I had a question for you, John.
What's that?
I had a question for you.
Oh, yeah.
Was there any discussion about fertilizing, using chemical fertilizers and stuff because of the pollinator garden?
Yes, sir.
What is that?
Yes, sir. We did.
Was there any resolution of that?
Yeah, why don't we address it when, if there's anything more from me, I'll field it, otherwise, like others take.
Okay, thanks, Jim.
Sure.
And for planning board members who might know or have forgotten, I want to thank Dawn and John, who both participated on the fairgrounds committee representing the planning board. That was a fair number of meetings, and thank you very much, both of you, for stepping up to do that.
My name is Kathy Landrum, and I served on the Fairgrounds Committee, but my passion as a Maine trained master gardener volunteer and, permaculture landscape design, professional is, to provide as much input as I could, in regard to the pollinator intentions of this community park. And we did discuss the issue of fertilizers and chemicals and came to a consensus that we wouldn't be using inappropriate chemicals that would leach into the water system, which filters into the school and eventually to Rancoot Lake. And so any chemicals that are not appropriate for pollinators wouldn't be used on the fields. And there are enough chemicals that are safe that can be used to fertilize and help the growth of the grasses that wouldn't be disadvantaged to the pollinators.
If there's agreement around that point on the committee, is there a way that you could express that in terms of a piece that could be included with the application?
Absolutely. Is there anything in existence in the plan? Okay. I'm free, if you'd like me to either make a statement or we could write something up and send it by email to the group.
You know, probably would be best if, you know, if the Fairgrounds Committee discussed it and agreed on it, however that comes to be, you know,
I agree.
It's fine. But if you could provide something to the planning board in that regard, if that's the agreement of the committee, that would be helpful.
Are there any other questions?
Anyone else? Thank you. Any other? Yes, please.
I'm Hannah Flannery, the chair of the rec committee. And I want to thank Jerry for helping the fairgrounds group move forward. There was a lot of work done by the rec committee prior to the forming of that group. And that we have a lot of teams, we have a lot of kids that participate in rec sports, so the need for this has been around for a number of years. So I'm happy they're moving forward, that we're here talking to you guys and at a place where we can hopefully improve the project and get it built.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you.
I'm Bruce Hunter. I'm chair of the Conservation Commission. I'm in a butter, although about a quarter mile, so they're really irrelevant. I want to talk about the stormwater drainage. In general, I agree with the concept that Rick has laid out on this plan. Probably don't have a map to look at, am I doing? No, okay. I just would like the plan was based on a 25-year weather incident. I think it'd be better to base it on something larger, like a 100-year incident. As we go forward, I think we're gonna see more rain around here and probably more into the rain per year. So I just wanna.
So would that change culvert sizes or?
Oh, no, that's an expensive addition.
I think,
Could you come up
Yeah.
to the podium?
so again, Rick Dunn with Mainland Development Consultants. The challenge that I think we all have with identifying a storm event or a standard for that. Is that there's infrastructure all around us that's not been held to that standard traditionally, so. You may find that there are town culverts. And other, other drainages that are not sized to accept a 100-year storm. So while we certainly want to take into account the the intensity of storms as they seem to be these days, you know, growing in intensity, even though we will use a 24-hour storm event. And we want to look at how is this project going to perform under higher rain conditions than even the 25-year storm. That's something that that engineering, you know, we look at. So we want to understand that it's going to perform in all of those conditions. But sizing of all infrastructure for a 100-year storm, let's say, is not something that traditionally has been carried through all infrastructure. And I think that is it's a relation to cost as well as practicality. But we're certainly happy to look at larger storm events and how this you know, this stormwater system performs at larger storm events.
The fact that we haven't sized it to the current conditions doesn't mean we should continue to undersize it. So what would be the big deal about changing to a 100-year incident?
I think within the development, reviewing you know, the flows that would happen during a 100-year storm is certainly within our capacity to do that, and sizing stormwater ponds so that they're going to survive a 100-year storm event. Absolutely. What you're going to find is that when you review the flows from that, there's going to be infrastructure downstream that's not going to correspondingly you know, perform as well as new development that we're going to propose. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Is there anything about this project or property that you think is particularly susceptible to the effects of a larger storm event than 25?
No, in my professional opinion, I would put this down on the lower risk scale. Simply because there's a lot of pervious space still. You know, your big flow generators is when you convert wooded and pervious areas to impervious, and this project is going to propose a large space impact because it's ball fields. There's going to be a lot of new usable space in terms of acreage, but in terms of the runoff, there's still a highly pervious surface. So a lot of that runoff is able to go into the ground. So that makes it a smaller risk from an engineering standpoint than your average, say, commercial development.
May I say something? I assume that what Rick means by impervious is on big parking lot and things like that. The field, the upper areas of the field are very impervious still. So the natural situation there is an impervious surface. And that's why we get so much runoff when we have a rainstorm out there. Almost the entire year it's dry, but we'll get a big rainstorm, you can see the water washing down through the field, mostly on top of the surface. And so I think that I would consider that an impervious surface. It's a very impermeable till.
Or looking for me to respond in that way, or do you want to?
Are you talking about the ball field or the grass field? The tall grass that the water doesn't.
It's. Where they're going to put in the ball field is probably pretty perfect, so that we'd be bringing in soil.
You're talking the area that's about grow tall all summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The area that's not gonna be disturbed or any change when we put it in the ball field. If that makes sense.
So the Readfield part, what you say,
Yeah,
towards the parking lot right now. Yeah, Eric, my understanding is that all of that is going to receive some attention and be graded, including that upper field. Did I understand that correctly?
Portions of that, so basically the area from the edge of the current parking lot down. Maybe 100 feet, 150 feet, something like that, will be left in natural field. So actually, I mean, I guess as far as the permeability though, again, to the point about existing conditions versus the improved surface. What's going to be put in place will offer better drainage than what's there now. Again, there's a lot of clay, I mean, where it's dug around this area, no, it's not great, so. Having drainage that actually collects some of the water, I think is gonna be an improvement, but, that's my, layperson's perspective, I'm not an engineer, but. I know I wish my lawn had a little bit more drainage and a little bit less clay, but, that's all I can offer on that, is that, the front portion right next to the parking lot, will remain as is. And then further down where we have the ball field starting is, we'll have amended soil and amended drainage.
I wish we had a map I could point at, but, the place I'm thinking of, if you go up there, dirt path that goes up to the baseball field. Just before you get there, there's a culvert. When we have the rainstorm that gets out across the lower part of the, grassland, it's gonna be left the way it is, it all goes through that culvert. And, so do you kind of understand what I'm talking about? It's sort of in the mid to western parts of the fairgrounds field. It's not near the parking lot I'm talking about, that's not really a problem.
Down to the left off the trail, is that where you're talking, or over on the right hand side?
You're talking about the parking lot.
If you're standing up on a parking lot and looking, to which side is the culvert that you're speaking of?
I'm not referring to a current trail that's in there, I'm referring to that dirt road that was built to go to the baseball fields.
Okay.
So right through the field.
Pardon?
Existing culvert you're talking.
Yeah, the
about.
existing culvert, yeah,
Going
yeah.
into the access.
That's where the water goes now. And I think that, maybe it's sufficient. But I guess, the problem could be it's not sufficient for a big storm in the near distant future. It could overflow, could,
Go where?
erode, or wherever the upper culvert's gonna be. It's not the same, Rick's gonna put in a new culvert. That goes under the field, that's what it shows.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you that, I mean, the culvert you're talking about is, I mean, it's going to be a different culvert, correct?
Yeah, I was
It
just,
goes from one side to the other.
yeah, I just wanna make clear what part of the field I'm talking about. And so that culvert kind of marks the drainage that's of concern. Rick has built a culvert to manage that flow through there. I think the kind of concept of that is good.
And your concern is that that new culvert will not handle the flow from a 100-year storm, but it will at 25.
Yes, yes.
So we're talking about one culvert?
I use the culvert talking now to try to book under the drain. Now, Rick's gonna put in a new culvert, and I don't know how that size compared to the original, the culvert that goes under the road. Right?
So I see the board looking in my direction. What I want to note is that the drainage system that's going to be associated with this field is going to be more complicated than one culvert. And what our job is as engineers and the applicant, the town in this case, what our job is to demonstrate to you as the board that we're not going to cause an undue issue with the drainage. So what I don't want to do is oversimplify and say, yes, we're going to put in a culvert of a larger size. The fact is, there's drainage going in a couple different directions. There's some that goes into the ground. Currently, there's some that goes into the ground in the developed condition, which is into the ball fields. What I will say is that the majority of surface runoff from the fields doesn't even end up in the system that I believe is being discussed currently, which is the waterway that corresponds with the existing wetland that you can see on the plan. And so what's being proposed is the surface runoff from the fields actually discharges what would be I think further to the north. Or for those of you familiar with the field where the little maintenance garage is located approximately. And there's a substantial drainage just below that. There's a gully of sorts that should be capable of carrying that drainage. So I don't want to minimize the concerns that you're hearing here tonight, but I think we have a good plan to address overall drainage for the facility.
So you're talking about, you know, the culverting as well as, surface drainage, under drains in your fields.
Exactly.
All of that operating as a system to address the 25-year storm scenario here.
That's spot on, yeah.
With this underground system, are you collecting more water than is collected now instead of the more water coming through something? Water that used to go down will now be going out.
Yeah, as I apologize.
Bruce.
Okay, so as Bruce noted, what goes into the ground currently is orders of magnitude less than what runs on the surface when we have a big rain event. And that's due to the rate that water can go down into the soil. The same will be true of the ball fields. They'll be able to soak up some water. We want that water to go into the loam so that the grass stays moist and fed and doesn't dry out in the summertime. But there's only so much water that can go down into the ground and only so fast. And so when you have a large runoff event, a very, very, very small portion that ends up going into the ground and more ends up running off into surface waters. And so I think the same will be true in the post-developed condition as in the pre-development condition, which is it's what goes into the ground is going to have a huge impact on the overall flows out of development. What we are planning is likely a stormwater pond, though the position is still up for grabs, and that's again because we want to have that pre-application meeting with the DEP to make sure that they're on board with the strategy.
Is the drainage plan, that's part of the DEP process, they approve that as part of the overall project?
Yes.
All right,
yeah.
So then covered. Legally, I mean, to their standards, right?
Yes.
And there's nothing requiring that we would go above their standards unless we chose to.
Only if your ordinance, dictates and only if you choose. So the DEP is certainly reviewing it per their standards.
Any other questions for Rick? Bruce, did you have anything?
I'm not too sure if we're talking about the same thing. It'd be nice to have a map, so we point to what we're talking about.
Eric, you don't have a map there, right? But even if it's well, there's, well, that one, yeah,
I guess I think we are, I think we've kind of gone through this a few times, two different ways, but I will see if I can find something out.
There's
Projects are right back here.
for that purpose, it's Eric Etch.
There's here. The pamphlets are over there, but I could also pull it up on here, I think. If our projector works. So it would be in.
So at the very end.
We have it in the application. Yeah, okay, that's what I was thinking. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so. That's gonna need to be a lot bigger.
I have a map on my screen, but I didn't really see it in such a thing.
Now is it at the?
What page is that of the application? Do you know what page it's on? 24.
Has the
Okay, I'm gonna try to find it. Would that one be? Is that good? Is that the one? down? Oh, I was there, wasn't I? For a minute. Is that?
There's another one, Bruce, that,
I need the laser pointer.
are specific to drainage. Or systemized.
We have a laser pointer. It works better than the projector.
Yeah, look at that. Here you go, Bruce, I'll give you the laser pointer. There's no point in running on it. Little red button.
I think it's the red button towards.
You would put it up in here?
Just a little red
Oh,
button.
the red button. Yeah,
There you go.
all right, what I'm talking about is the drain that comes down here. And if you look on the plan that mainland drew, you can see they put a culvert through here. It's kind of in between the baseball field and the softball field. And, I don't think that building these fields are gonna affect the water that goes through here at all, because the source of the water comes from up here. Down here, I'm not concerned with this drain that comes down here. Because that's not gonna be built on, that's not gonna change very much, it's just that. This one, is the one I think might need the 100-year plan. If you happen to be there in a rain, you'll see the water, surface water comes right down through it, goes to the, there's, if you, so it's in, there was a road that was built on the baseball field, built that goes right along, right like that. And the culvert I was talking about, is the culvert that goes on the road right there. You can walk down there and, you know, watch the surface runoff, it's just quite surprising how much runoff you have in the, so. Like I said before, when this is built, this area will absorb rain, you just like it about. There, baseball, you know.
Time's up.
With a spirit, it's not gonna.
Area gets built up, right? Yeah, so I know that's gonna be the way it is, man. Yeah, and I think I can speak to that fairly effectively. So what's been proposed, what we're calling a culvert, through the field system there is actually a system of undergrades. And their job is to take any water that goes into the ground and would otherwise perch on those less pervious soils. We want to get that water out so that the fields don't stay soggy. But in a rain event, like we were discussing earlier, the amount of water that can go down into the ground is orders of magnitude less than what runs off the surface. And what we're doing here is changing the dynamic of where the surface water runs, and actually it's not coming out in the same location. It's going to a gully that's further downhill. And so you're talking about that location is actually going to see less surface runoff in this developed condition, but it is going to have the water that goes into the ground is still going to come out where that wetland is. And the reason is we don't want to dry that wetland out completely. So that is it's a regulatorily protected natural resource. And we still want some water to go to the wetland that's down below so that we don't dry it out. So we're letting the water that's in the soil regime continue to stay in the soil and get to that wetland. But we're taking what's going to run off the surface and really is represents the problematic flows that we're all used to seeing on the news and things washing out, and those traditionally aren't from the water that's in the soils, that's at the surface. And it's because that amount of water is just so much larger than what can be transferred through the soil. And that the runoff from the fields is proposed to go down to a fairly large gully that's off to the right of this plan.
I agree with what Rick says, you know, we have to handle the water that goes through there. I just wanted to say that when you build the fields, it's not gonna make the water less, it's gonna be the same amount of water that flows through there now. And I think that's what you should base, that's what you base your 25-year dam. I just think you should consider raising it to a 100-year dam.
So Bruce, what I'm gonna tell you on that is that less than a half-year events will be able to get into the ground. So when we're talking about storm events, that's a surface runoff issue, not a groundwater runoff issue. So while we certainly do care about the larger storm events, they happen with intensity that the ground is not able to take up the water at the rate that it's coming down, and that's where we end up with that surface runoff. So I don't anticipate that the size of the storm is going to impact the sizing of any of the under drains. That's going to be dictated by the permeability rate of the materials that we use in construction. I know we got way down in the weeds there on in stormwater methodology, but I think it's important to say that you know, it's more complex than just when it rains, we get water everywhere.
Thank you for that, Bruce. Amber. Is there anyone else who'd like to make a comment? In the Zoom space, is there anyone who wants to comment?
No. Not,
No one?
no, I think we're good. That one.
There no one there?
What
There's two
about
people.
the project? He was just talking about the audio from the Zoom. Final.
Okay, so there's no one.
There's-
Okay, you're good.
There's two people still on, but they're not Readfield and John. Yeah.
If I haven't bored everyone enough with stormwater, I could make the last two drop off. Engineers are good at that.
Okay, you said Rob was on. Rob, did you have any comment?
No.
Okay. All right, so we've taken comment, and you know, I've been thinking about this application. I did have a conversation with Eric. I mentioned this to you too, Jack, that there are, I mean, it's a fairly significant project. It's definitely of townwide significance. There's interest in it. It's important. And there are a lot of moving parts. We certainly have this issue of drainage and stormwater. We've talked about some possible language having to do with chemicals being used on site. There are potentially a number of conditions that we might want to add, including some from the previous approval, those having to do with lighting and sound and so forth. And my inclination is to say that I want to make sure that all of us planning board members have sufficient time to think about all these things that we've heard, particularly the issues that have been raised tonight. Consider them sufficiently before we jump to a decision and design the conditions and so forth. And so I'm going to suggest in our discussion that we not fully deliberate and make a decision on this application tonight, but to wait for probably our next meeting, which is in December, to do that. And in the interim, for everyone to take the time to re-review this, look at the comments we received, think about the issues that have been raised. And then we can come back and deliberate, make a decision, and have a better idea, a better grasp on, you know, the conditions that are appropriate to attach and so forth. So I'd be interested in your comment and perspective on that approach. If it works for you or if it doesn't, so we can figure out how to proceed.
The town, is the applicant okay with that?
We're fine with taking the time and doing it right. I mean, we've got, like, as you know, our time frame is we've got some room, so thanks.
Other comments on that?
I think in light of that, it makes sense for us to a little bit more time. It sounds like there's a couple more things that need to be worked out,
I think there are.
like on the fertilizer.
Anyone else? Jack? Yeah, go ahead.
Like to have a pickleball court, and I'm a pickleball player. But I know people complain about noise. And I'm wondering whether there would be hours of operation for the facilities there, ball, baseball, you know, that when it starts at 8 or 9 in the morning. Stuff like that.
So as a public facility, I think it would be a little bit challenging. I only want to put rules in effect that we can enforce. I'm not planning on being at 6 in the morning telling people to leave pickleball court. I would expect that we would stick to the daylight hours, again, except for rare exception, we have like an evening activity. So I don't anticipate any limits on that. If we have problems with noise, I think that we can address that at that time. But right now, I don't believe there's a reason to limit the hours of operation for any of those amenities.
Okay, so we'll,
Should we leave the hearing open until December?
no, I was
Wanna close it?
going to leave it open until December. That's next, but any other questions or comments before we close the hearing?
Well, I guess just to pin something down that was mentioned during the site visit again, Eric, am I correct? There'll be 40 feet between the edge of the court, basketball / pickleball, 40 feet between that and the property line to the cemetery.
Correct.
And of course, there's no other property line that's even relevant, that's even close.
Absolutely, yeah. The next closest property line is hundreds of feet away through the woods, and so there's a significant buffer. The most impacted area would be that cemetery, at that one point where it's 40 feet. And even that, it widens out significantly once you get away from that corner of the court, so.
Thank you.
Anything else, anyone?
I guess just in light of that, town considered a possibility of closing a facility. I'm just thinking like if you had a graveside service going on. Already policy.
That's in line.
That's already policy. That is policy.
Yeah, there is actually something in the application about.
Sorry, we spoke with the peanut gallery.
Yeah, well, and I guess one of the other things I will say is that if there were any burials in that facility, they would be 200 to 300 yards. At the other end, and the only area that's actually active is quite far away. The area that's right adjacent, that at least 150 yards, maybe 200, is all old stones with no active burials. So we have a natural buffer, but also we do, of course, want to be respectful of folks that are there for interments. And so we won't be having any activities that are planned. I can't say someone's not going to play pickup basketball. Again, we can't enforce everything, but we won't have any planned activities during those events.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, so I would take a motion to close the hearing at this point. Second. Discussion. All those in favor? Okay. So we'll talk about, scheduling when it comes back. My sense is that it doesn't make a great deal of difference. On the timing of bringing it back to the board to deliberate, so. Either December or January would be workable for you, Eric.
Yeah, either is fine. Again, I do think that, you know, speaking to the financial capacity, having a permit, would be helpful with fundraising. Donors want to know that we have done our due diligence. So that's the only request, but, December or January doesn't make a difference. Just keep it in that.
Okay.
Thanks. Lots of.
Okay, so we'll talk about putting it on the schedule and. I'm just not certain about what else we have and.
We will have.
And I know when we have something, so. All right. Thank you all very much. I appreciate your time and your comments, answers to questions. It was all very helpful to us. So we'll let you all know when it's back on the schedule for our further discussion.
Great, thank you all.
Thanks. And in the interim, certainly, you know, we will come back to this issue about, you know, the chemicals and, if there's anything further to be said about the drainage plan, if there's any additional, statement or comment about that in response to what you've heard tonight, we can provide that to Chip as well, and he can distribute that to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we definitely will be looking at the fertilizer and the chemical application. It's important for a number of stakeholder groups. I think the drainage issue is pretty well resolved. I'll let you know if there's an update from DEP about if they see a need for any changes there. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we do have some minutes to review. So we could, let's get to that before we adjourn.
Hey, Bruce?
Yeah, I still have it.
Right here, buddy.
Oh, so I don't know, thank you. I just want to make sure that.
Okay, so we have minutes from October 8th. And from October 29th, which was our planning meeting. October 8th, Jack had suggested some edits. And you sent that to everyone. Okay, so everyone got Jack's edits. And I had just one additional small edit, which is in the last paragraph under the Fournier discussion. The second line talks about storing lumber. And I think that probably should be wood and firewood. Oh, yeah. I don't think he's handling lumber there. Okay. Any additional edits that anyone had in addition to Jackson or one of mine? And if not, I give a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second, further discussion. All those in favor? John is, I didn't talk about this specifically, John is not voting tonight, because we only one alternate, that was statement tonight. So the minutes of the 29th. That was, as I mentioned from our planning meeting, I had a couple of things there. In the first paragraph, land use ordinance revisions in the second line. It says assigned certain areas and topics to members for review and or modification. I would suggest changing that to say for review and for recommendations concerning revisions or other actions. It might result in revisions, it might not. And then the first bullet, Peter, you commented on that, and you're correct. That wasn't assigned to you. I'm going to do that. Jack and I are going to do that.
Thank you. Yeah, I missed that one and I tried to watch the video, but I couldn't catch
Yeah.
whose mouth was moving.
I'm always happy to avoid work, and I did agree, and that I would give my input, to Henry about, art design, things related to art design, and I did that in an email this afternoon.
Okay. And I would suggest adding to the 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th bullet about short-term rentals. We should probably include something there about the results of that discussion, so I would suggest something like, following discussion, planning board members agreed not to pursue regulating short-term rentals through the land use ordinance at this time. Something like that, just so it's clear that we did talk about it and there was a result. And then the last bullet, if I remember correctly, the floor area calculations and what to include and what not to include. John, you had offered to take that one, correct? John's not. She has Dawn, but I was thinking that was the issue that John had raised.
Great.
And he was gonna.
Sorry, Paula. I can do that. But it seemed like at the meeting, I don't remember. I don't think it was assigned to me at the meeting, but I certainly can do it.
Okay, or you and Don can confer, whatever, whatever works for both of you is fine, obviously. I was thinking that it was yours because you had raised that issue initially.
Yes, that's true.
So John and Dawn or just John?
Well, John, why don't you come back with your recommendations? If you want to talk to Dawn along the way, that's fine.
Okay.
But we can put your name there, to bring a recommendation down.
Wasn't, Don, I thought you were gonna talk to. Mark.
Colin Clark. Yeah.
Yeah, that's on the other piece,
The other one.
the footprint and the floor area, that's a separate bullet. Separate from the one we just talked about, the floor area calculations. The one that John raised about the shed and all that.
Okay.
And actually, Brandon had some suggestions about the shed thing as well. That we should talk about some kind of a case by case approach, and if that's possible, to accommodate those that might provide some environmental benefit, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So we'll need to look at, first of all, whether that's possible from a regulatory perspective and then what that might look.
That's above my pay grade.
And then, the only other, no, actually, I got a couple more. The last sentence on the page, it talks about the board briefly addressing the comp plan update. I'd suggest inserting, it says update revisions assigned to the planning board. I would insert for implementation in the short term. Because those are the only ones we talked about, and there are a lot of others that are midterm and long term. And then other business, there's a bullet about the January 14th meeting. And we haven't actually set the date in January for having another workshop on county law revisions. So, that is a regular meeting. But we haven't decided yet if we would be doing a separate meeting for the revisions or not. Potentially, it could be the 14th, but we haven't decided that definitely. That's all I have. Any others, anyone else? If not, I take a motion on this set.
And will we approve the minutes as amended?
Is there a second discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. All right, so we had agreed, we would, this is our only November meeting, and so our next meeting is on the 10th of December, and we'll be talking, with Chip about what's queued up and what will be on the agenda for that. And I understand from you, it's possible that we may have the marijuana bill application.
Problem.
But that's not definite, so. Don't count our cannabis chickens before they count.
With regards to that, if you're in the Birmingham area, after dark. In the upper Birmingham. Where Tractor Supply is, across the street is one of their stores.
Now,
You should
this,
drive by it after dark. We don't really want that,
is it colorful?
it's very colorful. Very gaudy.
And it's this thing.
Yeah, marijuana. Pretty happy this.
Do you know if it's a caregiver or a recreational? Does,
Up there,
a lot of times the sign will say recreational.
Well, we limit lighting signs to the
Yeah.
side of the buildings. I don't know, honestly.
Did you do a field visit, Brandon? Did you do a field visit? Or was that?
No, I'm good.
Okay, anything else, anybody? All right, thank you all, we're adjourned.
We got.
Okay.